Dear friends,
Рад
I'm
приветствовать
pleased to greet the
представителей
government and
государственных
business
структур,
representatives,
бизнеса,
experts and
экспертов и
industry
отраслевых
specialists who
специалистов,
have
которые
gathered to this
собрались
meeting of the
на
BRICS
встречу
Business
делового
Forum.
форума в рамках БРИКС.
I would like to
Отмечу,
note
что
that
регулярное
holding such
проведение
business
таких
forums on a
деловых
regular
форумов,
basis,
как и
along with the
системная
systematic
работа
work of the
делового
BRICS
совета
Business
БРИКС,
Council, which
объединяющего
brings together
ведущих
top businessmen
бизнесменов
and
и
heads
глав
of major companies
крупнейших
of the
компаний
5
стран
countries,
пятерки,
plays an
действительно
immense
играет
practical
большую
role in
практическую роль
promoting
в продвижении
mutual
взаимной
trade and
торговли и
investments,
инвестиций,
enhancing cooperation
углубление
ties,
кооперационных связей,
and expanding
расширение
direct
прямого
dialogue
диалога
among business
предпринимательских
communities, and thus
значительно деле
effectively
способствует
contributes to
ускорению
accelerated socio-economic
социально-экономического
growth
роста
of
наших
our states
государств
and
и
achievement
достижению
of
целей
sustainable
устойчивого развития.
development goals. It is
Важно, что в
important
центре
that this
внимания
forum
форума
focuses
находятся
on such
такие
pressing issues
актуальные
as the
задачи, как
post-pandemic
обеспечение
economic
постпандемийного
recovery
восстановления экономик
of the BRICS
государств
states,
БРИКС,
improvement
повышение
of citizens'
благосостояния
well-being,
граждан,
industrial
модернизация
modernization,
промышленности и
development
выстраивание
of efficient
эффективных
transport and logistics
транспортно-логистических
chains,
цепочек,
stimulation of equitable
справедливого
technology
трансфера
transfers. These
Решать
challenges
все эти
and complex
сложные,
tasks
комплексные задачи
have to be
приходится на
dealt
фоне
with
все более
amidst the increasing
углубляющейся
volatility in stock,
фондовых, валютных,
currency,
энергетических,
energy, and
продовольственных
food markets,
в
coupled
условиях
with
значительного
strong
инфляционного
inflationary
давления, вызванного
pressures
в том числе
stemming from,
безответственным
inter
и
alia, the irresponsible
безответственными
large-scale
действиями ряда стран
money
по проведению масштабной
emission
эмиссии для
by a
сглаживания
number of countries
издержек пандемии,
seeking to mitigate the effects of the pandemic, which has led to the accumulation of private and public debt.
серьезное
International
негативное
economic
влияние на
situation is also
международную
seriously
экономическую
affected
ситуацию
by the
оказывает
illegitimate
нелегитимная
sanction
санкционная
practice and
Незаконная
illegal freezing of
заморозка
assets
активов
of sovereign
суверенности.
states,
по
which
сути,
essentially
попрание
amounts to
всех
the
базовых
trampling
норм и
upon
правил
all the
свободной
basic
торговли
norms
и
and rules of
экономической
free
жизни,
trade and
которые
economic
еще не
life,
так давно
norms
казались
and rules
незыблемыми.
that not so long ago seemed
Прямым
immutable.
следствием этого стали
Resource
дефицит ресурсов,
shortages, increased
усиление
inequality,
неравенства,
rising
подъем
unemployment,
безработицы,
and aggravation of
обострение
other
других
chronic problems
хронических
of the
проблем
world
мировой
economy are the direct consequences.
Завинчиваются цены
Prices for food,
продовольствия, на
basic
базовые
agricultural products,
сельхозпродукты
and
и
crops
зерновые
have
культуры.
skyrocketed. And
От чего
it is the
страдают
most
в первую
vulnerable,
очередь
poor
наиболее
countries that
уязвимые
are
и бедные
hit
страны.
hardest.
Важно, что в
Importantly,
таких
and in this
условиях
circumstance, the
государства
BRICS
БРИКС
states have
усиливают
stepped up their
взаимодействие
interaction,
и наша
and our
совместная
joint
работа
work
по
to ensure
обеспечению
economic growth and
экономического роста и
sustainable
устойчивого
development
развития
brings
приносят
concrete, tangible
конкретные,
results.
осязаемые результаты.
More
Сообща
and more
запускаются
joint
все новые
projects are launched.
инфраструктурные и инвестиционные проекты. Растут
Mutual
товарные
trade is
обмены,
growing, industry
расширяются
contracts are
отраслевые
expanding.
Главное,
Above all,
мы
our cooperation
сотрудничаем
is
на
based on the
принципах
principles of
равноправия,
equality, partner
партнерской
support,
поддержки,
and respect to
уважения
each other's
интересов.
interests. And that
в этом
is what
суть
is the
устремленного
core of our
будущего,
association's forward-looking
стратегического
strategic
курса нашего
course.
объединения.
The course
Курса,
that reflects the
отвечающего
aspiration
чаяниям
of the larger
основной
part
части
of the international
мирового
community,
сообщества, так называемого
so-called
глобального
global
большинства.
majority. The
Цифры
figures
говорят
speak for
за себя.
themselves.
За
Over the last
прошедшее
decade,
десятилетие
mutual
взаимные
investments among BRICS
капиталовложения
states
государств-членов
have
БРИКС
increased
увеличились в
sixfold.
6 раз.
Their
В свою
overall
очередь,
investment in
инвестиции
global
в целом
economy,
в глобальную экономику
have
выросли
doubled.
в 2 раза.
and their
А
total
совокупный экспорт
exports
достиг
have reached 20%
20%
of the
от
world's
общемирового
exports.
показателя.
As
Что
for
касается
Russia,
России,
the trade
то наш
volume with the
торговый
BRICS
оборот с
partners
партнерами
has
по БРИКС
increased by
прибавил
40.5%,
40,5% и
and
составил
reaching the
рекордные
record of
230,
230,
более 230
even more than
миллиардов долларов.
230 billion.
А в первом
And the
полугодии
first half of
текущего
this
года
year
в сравнении
it
с
grew
аналогичным
by
периодом 2022 года он
35.6%
вырос
as
на
compared with the same
35,6%,
period in 2022,
до
and it reached
134,7
$134.7 billion
Отмечу
US
и то,
dollars.
что
I would also
доля
like to
стран
point out
объединения,
that the
в которых
share of the
проживает
BRICS
более 3
countries,
миллиардов
with their
человек,
population totally more of
достигла
3
в
billion
мировом
people,
ВВП почти
now accounts to nearly
26%.
26% of the
А
global
по
GDP.
паритету покупательной
And our
способности
5 countries are
Ethiopia
ahead of
обходит группу
G7 in terms of purchasing power parity, with 35.1% against 30% forecast for 2023.
набирает силу
The objectives and
объективный,
irreversible
необратимый процесс
process of
дедоларизации наших хозяйств.
de-dollarization of our economic
Предпринимаются
ties
усилия
is
по
gaining pace.
отработке
We are working
эффективных
to
механизмов
fine-tune
взаимных
effective
расчетов
mechanisms
и
of mutual
валютно-финансового
settlements and
контроля.
monetary and financial control.
Как
As a
результат,
result, the
доля
share of US
доллара
dollar
в
export and import
экспортно-импортных
operations
операциях в
within
рамках
BRICS is
снижается.
declining. Last
прошлом
year
году
it
она
was
составила
only
всего лишь
28.7%.
28,7%.
In
К слову,
fact,
в
this
ходе
summit
нынешнего
is
саммита
to
мы
discuss
еще
the
подробно
detail,
обсудим
the
весь спектр
entire range of
вопросов,
issues
связанных
related
с
to the
переходом
transition
на
to national
национальные
currencies
валюты по
in
всем
all areas of
направлениям
economic
экономического
cooperation between
сотрудничества.
our 5 nations. The
Безусловно,
new
большая
BRICS
роль в
Development
таких
Bank,
усилиях
which has
принадлежит
already
новому
become a
банку
credible
развития
alternative to existing
который уже
Western
уверенно
development
заявил о себе в качестве
institutions, has a
альтернативы
great role to
действующим
play
западным
in these
институтам
efforts.
развития.
It is only
Логично,
natural
что
that
одним из
enhancing
приоритетов
connectivity and
взаимодействия
creating
Этиопии в
new
целом
resilient
стало
transport
укрепление
routes has become a
взаимосвязанности,
shared
создание
priority
новых устойчивых
in cooperation
транспортных
between
магистралей.
our 5 countries.
Особое
In this
значение в этом
context,
контексте
the BRICS
имеет
Business Council's
инициатива
initiative
делового
to
совета
elaborate
BRICS по
modern
выработке
intermodal
современных
logistics
интермодальных
solutions
логистических решений
and
и
develop
развитию
railway transport
железнодорожных
corridors is of
транспортных
particular
коридоров.
importance. For
Со
this
своей
part,
стороны,
Russia
Россия
actively
активно
works to redirect its traffic and logistics flows to reliable foreign partners, including BRICS states. Our flagship projects include the Northern Sea route and the new international North-South transport corridor. These two major transport routes aim to provide the shortest and most cost-effective trade routes to link major industrial, agricultural, energy hubs with consumer markets. With regards to the Northern Sea route, I would like to emphasize that Russia has already adopted and launched a large-scale, multi-year plan to develop its infrastructure. We intend to build fuel terminals, hub ports, to ensure connections with the road and rail transport. Ice-breaking fleet is expanding, first of all by commissioning nuclear-powered vessels that have no analog in the world. As for the North-South transport corridor, it will connect Russian ports of the Northern Seas and the Baltic and with offshore terminals in the Persian Gulf and Indian Ocean, thereby providing opportunities to increase cargo transportation between Eurasian and African countries. Besides, this will certainly give impetus to developing new industrial, trade, and logistics facilities along those routes. Russia stands for greater cooperation within the BRICS on reliable and uninterrupted supplies of energy and food resources to the world markets. We are consistently increasing supplies of fuel, agricultural products, and fertilizers to countries of the Global South and making a significant contribution to strengthening global food and energy security, addressing acute humanitarian issues, and fighting hunger and poverty in the countries in need. All these issues in particular were discussed in depth at the recent Russia-Africa Summit. For example, last year, trade in agricultural products between Russia and African states grew by 10% and amounted to $6.7 billion. In January-June this year, it increased by another record 60%. Our country is and will remain a responsible supplier of food to the African continent. Russian grain exports to Africa amounted to 11.5 billion tons in 2022 and almost 10 million tons in the first 6 months of 2023. And this is despite the unlawful sanctions imposed on us that seriously hinder the export of Russian food products and complicate transport, logistics, insurance, and bank payments. Russia is being deliberately obstructed in the supply of grain and fertilizers abroad, and at the same time we are hypocritically blamed for the current crisis situation in the world market. This has been clearly seen in the implementation of the so-called grain deal, concluded with the participation of UN Secretariat and initially aimed at ensuring global food security, reducing the threat of hunger, and providing aid to the poorest countries. We have repeatedly drawn attention to the fact that in a year under the deal, a total of 32 million tons of cargo has been exported from Ukraine, of which over 70% have reached high and upper middle income countries, including the European Union, first of all. And only about 3% have gone to the least developed countries, less than 1 million tons. None of the terms of the so-called deal concerning the lifting of sanctions imposed on Russian exports of grain and fertilizers to world market have been fulfilled. Obligations to Russia in this regard have been simply ignored. Even our free transfer of mineral fertilizers blocked in European ports have been obstructed. In fact, that is purely humanitarian campaign that should not in principle be subject to any sanctions. With these facts in mind, since 18 July we have refused to further extend the so-called deal, and we will be ready to get back to it, but to get back only if all obligations to the Russian side are truly fulfilled. I have repeatedly said that our country has the capacity to replace Ukrainian grain both commercially and as free aid to needy countries, especially since our harvest is again expected to be perfect this year. As a first step, we have decided to graciously provide 6 African countries 25 to 50,000 tons of grain, each with free delivery of these cargoes. Negotiations with the partners are going to an end. Among the priority lines of interactions, we see also further coordination of the approaches of the BRICS participants on the subject of supporting small and medium-sized enterprises. This is an important part of the overall economic agenda of the Group of Five, which implies the assistance of the widest circles of citizens involved in business regarding the issues of administrative and tax regulation, digitalization, electronic commerce, and participation in the value chains. I would note that thanks to the state support programs, the entrepreneurs from the BRICS countries successfully adapt to the constantly changing situation in the global market. They find new partners, new sales channels, attract additional funding, and use more actively modern technologies. It is equally significant to continue to develop cooperation within the BRICS countries in the field of decarbonization of economy, reduction of man-induced impact on the nature and adaptation to the changing of climate. Russia is ready to work jointly to promote more balanced approaches to the climate change in the international arena. Our country is consistently implementing the national low-carbon development strategy. We plan to reach the carbon neutrality of the Russian economy not later than 2060, including through the introduction of technological innovations, modernization of infrastructure for access to affordable and clean energy, conservation of ecosystems on land and sea. We believe that the implementation of the climate goals can be facilitated by a variety of technologies, including those that have been in use for a long time already, such as nuclear generation, hydropower, gas motor fuel. To sum it up, I would like to reiterate that the multifaceted partnership and cooperation within the BRICS is not only makes a significant contribution to ensuring sustainable growth of our states, but also generally promotes the healthy global economy and successful achievement on the global development goals and targets set by the UN to fight poverty, expand people's access to quality health care, eradicate hunger, and improve food security. Therefore, I'm confident that the BRICS Business Forum and Business Council will continue their creative work aimed at the improvement of contacts between the entrepreneurial circles of the countries of the Group of Five and joint implementation of mutually beneficial projects. In conclusion, I would like to invite representatives of the business circles to our countries to come, to the Eastern Economic Forum in Russia that will take place in 10 to 13 September in the city of Vladivostok, where by tradition there will be discussion of issues that are of interest, including the business community of the BRICS countries. Thank you very much for your attention.